time for I called it the 75,000 mile review, but realistically it's 78,746 mile review on my 2007 C6. I mean, in all honesty, there's nothing but positive stuff that I can say about this car. Does it have quirks here and there? Of course it does, but it's nothing that really bothers me too much. So just a little history about this Corvette before we get into the latest review. I bought this car in 2013 after buying a C5. So C5 has always been my all-time favorite, kind of my goal car. This is my dream car. I need to own it at some point. So after buying it, I honestly just didn't want to drive it much. I mean, I was really careful with the car, and I wanted to build it, and it's one of those things that I want to, build a car and then give it to my son, after he turns a specific age. He's only 10 now, but, there's time. And at that point, I was driving a BMW 550i, and I was miserable in that car. First of all, it was automatic, so that transmission just kept slipping all the time. I didn't have any fun with it. And it was one of those cars where I was going through, I guess, some kind of phase in my life where I just wanted an adult car, but that still looked, somewhat reasonable. And so after spending about $10,000 in repairs on that car, I mean, you name it, I've done it on it. My wife was the one that finally said, like, why don't you just get another Corvette and drive it? And I honestly never even considered the option of just having two Corvettes. But I'm happy she convinced me, because pretty much instantaneously, she ends up finding the C6. It was super reasonably priced at the time. So in 2013, I paid, I believe it was $24,900 or $23,900. And it was only 4 months, I think, 3 or 4 months after I bought the C5. So I took my 550i into the dealership that had it. After some back and forth, we finally negotiated a trade-in value, traded that piece of junk in, to be honest, and ended up getting this car. And that was it. I mean, the car at the time, I think it was right around 50,000 miles. It was lowered on stock bolts. It had this Borla exhaust. It had crate Corvette wheels at the time, which I ended up swapping out for some XIX wheels since the manufacturer sent those to me to kind of do a test run. I just honestly never bothered swapping them back. I still have the old set as well. Probably just need some new tires. But as far as maintenance goes, all I've done with this car is literally, like I said, swapped out the tires once with the new wheels, and then oil and filter changes. So this car was my daily for years, and I honestly thought it was just going to be a daily for the rest of my life. However, I started getting attached to this car, and I wanted to kind of keep it forever, and so I decided, you know what, I'm going to get something different, and I'm just going to baby this car from now on, take it on a drive like this every once in a while, get to enjoy the C6 as much as I'm enjoying the C5, because although they're very similar, they still have their own driving characteristics, and I enjoy driving both of them. As far as upgrades went, the only additional upgrade that I did is I put the Veraram intake on it, just opened it up a little bit more. It does feel slightly faster, but that was really it. Now, of course, after the car's been sitting there for a while, and after that, taking it back and forth, there are some things that I need to do maintenance-wise. I'll probably record videos for all of those, but nothing honestly too far out of the norm. But it's just remarkable how low this car is. I mean, I drive an STI as my daily, and even my GTR is not as low as this car. I mean, this just feels like you're completely just dragging on the floor the entire time, and it's quite a unique driving experience. It also does have just stupid amount of torque. I mean, you can just downshift and just take off instantly in this car. I mean, my God. A lot of the times you just feel like you have an unlimited amount of torque at your disposal. I'm seeing the C6 Corvettes, they've been climbing up in prices, especially with the manual transmission. And I mean, I completely understand why. Even previously, before it became a norm, I was always telling my friends, I said, it really would make a good drift car. I said I wouldn't be surprised if once they become a little bit more older and cheaper, that a lot of people turn them into the next 240s. And I don't know if it's just the algorithm chasing me down or if really there are that many more drift spec C6s, but it definitely looks like the 240 kind of premonition that I had is coming true. The other real interesting part about this car is it actually handles really well, surprisingly well. I mean, going through curves and everything like that, honestly, I think it's just fear more than anything before I feel the car slipping out. I don't think I've ever pushed it to that point where the rear gets away from me. And I honestly don't even know if I'm at the limit compared to, for example, the STI. The STI is so stable that, I mean, you can keep pushing that car and you know it's not going to get away from you. Same thing with the GTR. With the Corvette, it feels deceptively stable. Like one wrong move and I'm gonna, you know, slide out from under you. Well, like I said, I've tried pushing it much harder than I'm comfortable and the car just sticks around. But I gotta say, for a 17-year-old car to drive like this, it definitely keeps saying that cars aren't just being built anymore for the sake of driving, like this one definitely was. It just feels like they're just shoving so much more technology into these cars and just completely losing the sense of what a car actually is. Now, I do like a lot of 90s JDM cars, as well as a lot of American cars. Definitely the Corvette falls into that sweet spot category where the engineers just had the opportunity to make stuff ridiculous. So for example, this is the base model. The reason why it's the base model, I knew this car is going to be worked on eventually. And so I'm not going to feel guilty stripping it apart, changing out a bunch of stuff. Like for example, these seats. Seats are okay, but I definitely need more stability when driving this car. Suspension upgrades, you know, engine upgrades, all of that stuff is going to be done to this car in due time. But when you start looking at the Z06 and the ZR1 spec Corvettes, I mean, you see that the engineers just had at it and they're just going completely crazy with it. And that's one thing that I always appreciated. I mean, Dodge will come out with the Hellcat and the Demon, they'll flat out admit, like, look, this thing doesn't handle, but it's got 1,000 horsepower, so here you go. You know, it's just something ridiculous for you to enjoy. And with the new C8 Corvette, I honestly didn't think after the Z06 that they were going to introduce the ZR1, but here they come. Now there's all these rumors that the ZR1 is definitely coming out. And again, it's going to be something crazy and ridiculous. The only thing that they need to bring back in the C8, and I hope that they do listen to this, they can even have it as a limited production run, I mean, it doesn't matter, is the manual transmission. So unlike the brands that have to import and pay for every single option, I can't even remember what the price tag is. I think it's like $1 million if you want to bring in, you know, different trims and transmission styles. The domestic market doesn't have to do that. So if Chevy does decide to bring out something ridiculous like that, just know that I'll definitely be one of the first ones on the list to buy that car. But to be honest, after driving the GTR and after experiencing what an automatic transmission can feel like, if they're able to match that level of not just precision, but where the transmission is just violent, and you get that car driving experience, and in all honesty, sign me up. Up until those points, and I mean, and even after, I'm still going to be driving this car, doing some regular maintenance, definitely need some fluid flushes here and there, and hopefully this is one of those cars that I pass down to my kid and then him pass down to my grandchildren one day. For now, I am going to do some more regular updates on this car. Pretty much anytime I do anything to the car, you guys are going to know about it. Also pretty regular kind of driving updates, just so that we can keep in touch as the car ages, what's going on with it. I know there's a lot of people trying to buy them. Like I said, this is a 2007 model, so it's 17 years old right now. Like I said, still drives like a dream.